So here's a fun one. We are starting with a gorgeous drone shot of a church on the coast of Iceland, filmed by my friend Louisa Winters, who apparently visits places that look like After Effects demo projects. So I sped it up, stabilized it, tracked it, and then wrapped some text around the church and also added some slightly bizarre 3D models. Now, if you want to get the full story, today is your lucky day. If not, just stay a little bit longer, maybe hit that like button and then move on to the next video. I won't be insulted. Much. So thank you for choosing to fly with me. I know you have other options and frankly, some of them have more AI in them, but not this one. So let's make this worthwhile and learn how to realistically composite live footage and 3D elements in After Effects. So the original drone footage shot at
Volsna
by my friend Louisa Winters looks beautiful, but also a little bit sleepy and slightly wobbly. So first I sped it up, then scale it down a bit, stabilize it, and then let the 3D camera tracker do its thing. Once the track is complete, it's always a good idea to check the accuracy. So let's open up the advanced options and look at the average error value. Anything below 1 pixel is usually good enough, and here we are sitting around 0.7, which is very respectable for a windy Icelandic church situation. Next, we need to tell After Effects where the center of this 3D world should be. So in this case, I think the porch here near the church entrance feels like a good anchor point. So I'll hover around this area, or actually above it, until I find the target with the correct orientation. Then I'll right-click and choose Set Ground Plane and Origin. Now we can create the camera and start adding some unnecessary but beautiful 3D things. For the title, I'm using a tall condensed font like Gotham X Nero, which you can sing via Adobe Fonts, and I'll type a question inspired by the famous Pixies song, "Where is my mind?" Where is it? Honestly, probably somewhere between pre-comps. So, to wrap the text around the church here, I'll add a circular mask to the text and then attach the text to the mask. Next, I'll convert the layer to 3D and then I'll add a rotation animator. So to make the letters stand upright in a semicircle fashion, let's also enable per character 3D and then set the X rotation to 90 degrees both inside the animator and for the main layer rotation itself. In my case, the letters are facing the wrong direction, which honestly describes most of my projects at some point. So I'll reverse it in the path options over here. And now we can add some extrusion. So maybe around 30. Also a little bevel, perhaps 4. And of course, you can experiment with the bevel styles until it looks suitably dramatic for your needs. To position the title properly in 3D space, I'll create a null object from one of those tracking points behind the church. Then I'll hold down Shift and parent the text to this null, which usually gets the position right while completely destroying the orientation and scale, which is of course part of the fun. So let's adjust this null until the text sits roughly where you want it, and then we can also tweak the first margin value in the text path options to make the letters more readable. At the moment, the text still looks pasted on, so let's fix that with some lighting and shadows. So I'll go back to the tracked footage layer and select several ground tracking points in the background, which is going to create a temporary target that roughly represents the ground plane. Now you can option click inside the target to scale it up. We actually needed to cover the entire scene here because I'm planning to add additional 3D models. So this is really important at this stage. Once you have a big enough target, you can right click on the center of it and choose Create Shadow Catcher and Light. Because I'm using the advanced 3D renderer, the generated light needs to become either an environment, spot, or parallel light before we can see proper shadows. For now, I'll switch off cast shadows. We're going to add them later manually, but I do want to use an environment light first, mostly because it lets us use the footage itself as a light source. And this will hide the layer automatically because apparently After Effects likes drama. So either re-enable its visibility or duplicate the footage beforehand. Now that we have this set up, we can return back to the light and rotate the environment and maybe even lower its intensity slightly to around 70% so the textures and the highlights from the footage start reflecting naturally on the 3D text. To enhance this effect, you can also increase the text material's specular intensity and shininess value. So just play with them until they look good enough for now, and I think this is much better. But we are still missing the contact shadows. So the lighting in this shot is very soft because Luisa apparently ordered a deluxe cloud package for this day. However, subtle shadows still help ground the objects in the scene. So I'll create a spotlight. I'll make sure to enable shadow casting, and then I'll start placing it roughly where the sun should be. So this needs a little bit of tweaking, especially for the point of interest. Look at the video for reference and then play with it until it looks correct. Then let's tweak the shadow darkness and diffusion until the shadows blend naturally with the footage. Now we need to bring some foreground elements back in front of the text, mainly the church, the pole on the left, and maybe the part of this hill. So thankfully, the latest version of After Effects makes this process ridiculously easy. To achieve it, I'll duplicate the main footage layer and move this copy to the top of the stack. Then I'll Option double-click the comp to open it in the layer viewer. Over here, we can use the relatively new Object Mask tool. So you can hover over the church and select it automatically. Then let's do the same for the pole. This seems to look really good, and for the hill that I want to maintain, I'll switch to the selection brush, and now I can manually paint the missing area that I want included. Once I'm happy, I'll let the tool propagate until the end. And of course, I'll speed this up because who has time to watch as paint dry? But once it's done, you can freeze the result, which is going to bake this propagation into the After Effects project file, and this is something you definitely want to do. Honestly, this process is so much fast these days, it almost feels suspicious. While we're here, I'll also raise the reduce chatter value to 100% for smoother temporal results. And now let's preview everything so far and make a few finishing adjustments. Maybe tweak the text placement slightly, rotate it a bit, or darken the side color so it reads more clearly. You can do it by adding another animator just for the side or for the bevel or for the front. Play with it, make it your own until you feel it looks better. At this point, we can start adding extra 3D elements because clearly wrapping giant text around the church wasn't enough. So I already imported a few 3D models and brought them into the comp, and then I attached them to a new tracking nulls generated from the original camera track. The trick here is choosing tracking points that actually match the model's position in 3D space. Once you parent them to the null, you can scale and rotate the null until everything feels properly connected to the scene. Because we already created a large shadow catcher, the models that I'm adding automatically receive realistic shadows, which saves a lot of manual work. In case you're wondering, in this scene, I'm using the free desert nomad windmill, a model by Ben Van Helst, and a floating brain model, really cool, by Osho. Both of them were downloaded for free from sketchfab.com. I also added a few extra point lights to create highlights and help the models blend more naturally into their environment. And that's our surreal little Icelandic scene, created entirely inside After Effects using the camera tracker, object masking tools, and the advanced 3D renderer. It's weird, slightly unnecessary, and honestly great fun to build. So hopefully you picked up a few useful techniques along the way, or at the very least learned that wrapping giant 3D text around churches is still perfectly valid creative decision. My name is Eran, thank you so much for watching, and if you ever happen to visit the Icelandic coastline, keep an eye out for floating brains, strange mech windmills, and suspicious typography.